Hello, everyone. This is Sean Kiernan, president of the Wheat for Warriors Project. Hi, this is Sean Kiernan with the Wheat for Warriors Project, and we got a special guest here today on our second podcast, and that guest is the man, the myth, the founder of the Wheat for Warriors Project, Kevin Richardson. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks. How's it going?
It's going well, brother. It's going well. I'm glad to have you on here today. We're going to talk about a lot of things, and one thing I want to start off with, how are you doing, and how's your family doing, and what are you up to here lately?
Doing good. I mean, as you know, I took a step back from the project to kind of handle some personal demons and, stuff that I've sacrificed for the better good of the veterans, which was my family. And I needed to repair some things with my wife and kind of get my own health back on track because I made a lot of personal sacrifices to help, a lot of veterans. And, now I'm back with you guys and starting up the Semper High show and kind of doing more outreach and more the blunt kicked in.
Good, I'm glad you and you bring up a good point. I want everyone to know it was funny. Was it back in January? I think you called me and you just said, "I'm done, I'm out." And I said, "Okay," and I literally stepped up and started running it without your help, and it's been tough because you added so much value. And then about a month and a half ago, we started reintegrating you back into the project. And so do you think, let's talk about, did that time off help you? And how's your family life? Is it better? Does your wife still want to kill you like mine?
Yeah, that's, PTSD and marriage is a very hard issue. And as a veteran with PTSD, I know that I'm hard on certain subjects with my wife, as far as discipline for the children. And so I really had to do some soul searching and really I changed my whole lifestyle around. I eat completely different. I'm working out now. I'm trying to balance the beast that's in me. Instead of before, I was trying to just shut it off completely and that wasn't working. And I found that with PTSD, I need to accept that I have it and learn coping mechanisms, how to deal with it. And the last couple months have been beneficial. I feel my spirits are up. I mean, I was really getting drained. Just, you know how it is. I mean, just, it seems like, you take 4 steps forward and take fucking 10 steps back. A lot of the issues that we're dealing with as veterans in this cannabis movement. And, you got the VA shitting on us. You got other organizations shitting on us. And it's just hard to deal with that on a daily basis. And after, from April 2014, from my suicide attempt to 30 days later, starting the Wheat for Warriors project to just this last January, stepping back and taking a much needed break. I've noticed a big change in my own life with this break that I took off.
Good. Well, I'm glad you took that break, and I am not embracing my PTSD. I'm denying I have it, and my wife wants to kill me, so I might have to talk to you more. But so, Kevin, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your demons and kind of, we talked before we started the show, and really there's no places we are not going to go tonight for those who are listening. When you talk about PTSD, talk about kind of how you started to realize there was something off, and how did you come to grips with that, or didn't come to grips, obviously, with your suicide attempt. But when did it start to, my wife noticed it before anybody. Is that the same thing?
I think
go get help.
Yeah, I think my wife just thought I was a dick, and then now she thinks I'm a dick with PTSD. So I really started noticing it as soon as I got back from my deployment. I had what I know now as a night terror, but my wife went down to check the central air and heating, and I thought somebody was coming in my house, and I almost attacked her. And I told my gunny the next day, hey, Gunny, I had this issue. And he was like, well, you should have done it. You should have took her out, because then you would have got away with it. And I was thinking, well, maybe nothing's wrong with me then. And then I started having dreams where I was jumping out of bed at night and looking for weapons. And then I couldn't take my family anywhere. I mean, everywhere we went, I'd be recognizing threats, making my kids stand on the left side, right side. It was like I was leading a formation. And I started noticing that my kids were becoming paranoid to go places. And then on top of that, I was drinking mass amounts of alcohol. I was raging out, on my wife, cussing, calling her every, dirty name in the book. I mean, I was a complete mess. And after a separation or two from my wife, I was like, man, I really got an issue here. I need to go find something out. And I knew about PTSD because I was a federal law enforcement instructor and I used to teach, fight or flight and hypervigilance and all that. And I took a screening before I got out of the military, and they said, you have the symptoms for PTSD. And I said, what is that? And they said, it's a mental anxiety disorder. And I said, well, I don't want to claim that. I'm trying to become a federal cop or get into law enforcement, do something like that. That's paramilitary. And so I started going to the VA. Went through a couple screenings with like 3-4 different doctors, and they were like, yeah, you have severe PTSD. I still was drinking heavy. I still was, taking all the pills. I was on they got me on 17 different prescriptions. I was hooked on painkillers. I started doing steroids. I was complete mess. And,
you got out what get out of the military?
I got out in 2004.
Okay. And when did you join? 2000, correct?
I was joined in 2000. I was pre 9/11, and 9/11 hit, and my unit was the first one deployed with the 13th MU in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And we went to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Africa. Didn't really get a lot of action because the enemy was running into the mountains. Special forces got some of the Cobras out there, lit some motherfuckers up. But, coming back from that with that mindset of just always being hypervigilant. I mean, you think about it, my philosophy is PTSD starts in boot camp because we're training people for combat, and you don't play like it's a game. You train like you fight. And so you got a lot of these guys that are getting out that, never even were deployed that are committing suicide. Like the statistics state 75% of all veterans committing suicide were never even deployed or never even saw combat.
That's a good point. I mean, because one of the things that drives me crazy is this whole combat vet moniker. And I don't even know what the fuck that means other than what people think it means. And it's not what people think it means. It's actually what I've seen is a moniker by which, to your point, what we're finding out that there's very little relation between combat and the suicide epidemic that we're seeing. And you were the first one that brought this to my attention about your view on basic training. And it makes sense because they basically tear you down and build you up into this fighting animal. And then they expect you to become normal when you get out again. And talk about in 2004 when you get out, because you have an interesting background. Not only did you have issues, but then you started to do things that were you basically fought UFC, correct?
Yeah, I did. Well, not UFC, Gladiators Challenge, but, mixed martial law. That from 2000. As soon as I got out 2004, I started training under Frank Shamrock. And then, bounced around to a couple different gyms. I had the opportunity to train with some great people like Kung Lee, Leopoldo Serrao, the Gracie family in Torrance. Many people don't know that, I was in a couple magazines teaching hand-to-hand combat for law enforcement. I taught firearms. I'm a master instructor underneath the California Post. I mean, I have a pretty extensive background in teaching, and that was going to be my career. I mean, I traveled around 6-7 months out of the year teaching across the nation. I was total conservative, looked at cannabis as, if you smoked it, you're some hippie shitbag.
You were a cop.
Off the Richter, military mindset. And, I was a pretty selfish human being during that time frame.
During that time frame. Now, and how, when you were doing steroids, how big did you get and what were you fighting at?
I was at 290, but I didn't get into steroids until I fought at 205, light heavyweight, and then I kept, my disabilities were catching up to me. I mean, I got out of the military with 40% back, arm, wrist, knees, disability, TBI that I didn't know I had. But it started catching up to me. So I started doing, because everybody was doing it that I was training with, and I started doing a little bit of test to help my body heal. And then when I found out I had a brain injury and I hung up the gloves, I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to see how big I can get. And I got up to about 290, which was pretty big.
So we're talking about, when did you start? So 2004, you get out, you start working for NASA, correct?
Yes.
And when did you leave NASA? I mean, at what point did you leave NASA, and why did you leave NASA?
Well, I was experiencing blackouts and seizures, and so they already restricted me from carrying a firearm or driving a vehicle, which later to find out that was because of all the prescriptions I was taking through the VA. I kind of knew that my time there was limited because I had a secret clearance, and as soon as they caught wind, I had PTSD. I knew that that job was donezo. I had gotten injured on the job teaching hand-to-hand combat in 2013, and during that time frame, being injured and that weighing on me, knowing that I couldn't do that job anymore, and all the PTSD and marriage shit that was going on, that's when I had that suicide attempt. And so after that, I resigned from my position there because I knew that mentally I couldn't do it anymore.
So you find yourself, you get out of the Marines, you join NASA. While you're at NASA teaching, defense and so forth, you are taking a massive amount of pharmaceuticals that the VA is prescribing you, correct?
Yes.
So what was your pharmaceutical rep? Because I know when you got out of the hospital one time, you showed me the number of medications you were taking, and it really just shocked me. But the good thing is the VA gave you a pill organizer.
Yeah, that was from the American Legion. So,
yeah. Thank God the American Legion doing so. The single most useless group that I have. It's basically the elderly. Freaking, don't even get me started. We can talk about that.
But in regards to prescriptions, at my highest, I was on 17 different prescriptions, and I started having extreme body shakes, and they had me on like 8 different sleeping meds. And come to find out, I had severe sleep apnea. And so the meds were like, they almost killed me on all the sleeping meds that they were giving me. And they were making me pass out during the day, which, when you're driving government vehicles and you're armed up and you're transporting large amounts of ammo and weapons, it's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, to say the least. So to take me now to, you're out of NASA, and where's your focus and lead into what ended up being your suicide attempt? What are you doing at home? I mean, now you're not working. Your lovely wife is probably having to deal with you 24/7, which can't be easy. Talk about kind of what led up to the suicide attempt and kind of how you dealt with that.
I carry a lot of guilt, especially with my older children. I see that they look at me like I'm a monster. I mean, they used to nickname me the Hulk. And, I was drinking heavy and having, marital issues. And so I just left the house, went around the corner, and I just started drinking. I mean, I drank probably almost a whole gallon of vodka, and I took over 70 something, Percocets, Norcos, whatever I had collected in my pill bottle. And it just so happened a veteran that I met through my PTSD 101 class at the VA had called me, and he said, hey, brother, you're slurring your voice. What the fuck's up? And I said, dude, I'm checking out, bro. I'm fucking done with this shit. And he said, where are you at? And I didn't want to tell him at first. I said, I'm not at home. And he said, on Marines, you better tell me. And I ended up saying where I was at, and he broke every vehicle law to get to me, pick me up. And I was even drinking the whole way to the VA. I mean, I was seriously done. And we get to the VA. He told them that I'm trying to commit suicide. They gave me a breathalyzer. I blew a 400, which I guess is a pretty high score.
Congratulations. You just got the gold medal. This is at the Palo Alto VA, correct?
Yeah. And so, they ended up pumping me up with charcoal. I fucking blew black chunks everywhere and fucking shit black tar out my ass for like fucking a week later. But, I ended up being in ICU for about 4 days. My heart wouldn't restart to a normal rhythm. And then after that, they voluntold me I had to go into the mental ward. I did another, couple days there until I fucking went Hambo in there, and they thought it would best if I go home instead of being in the mental ward.
No one wants your fucking ass around. I can guarantee you that. Trust me, when you called me a month and a half ago, I'm like, oh shit, he's back. No, I'm teasing. So when we talk, get people in the mindset where you're at, because I think it's important to be like, what gets you to, and I remember being there, what gets you to the point of, fuck it, I don't care anymore. I want to be done. Where are you at in your mind? Why is your mind, remember, we're humans, right? We're supposed to have this desire to live, and yet your body and your mind's at a place that it wants to go away. Why are you there, and where is your mindset, and what demons are you dealing with?
Well, it's a very dark place, the mind gets. I even go through, sometimes on the daily where it's I get into this state of mind where it's I'm going to hurt somebody else or hurt myself, and it's that's where cannabis helps me reflect on that and kind of meditate. But I get to the point where I feel like I'm not good enough, and when I get to that point, it's like I don't want to be hurt by somebody else, so I want to hurt everybody around me, get them away from me, and I seclude myself, and I become, I don't want to leave the room. I start, at that time I started just drinking heavy, and through the alcohol and that state of mind, it got to the point where I was just like, I don't care about my life. I just hurt everybody around me. It'd be better if I wasn't here at all, because then they can live their life and not have to blame me for their shortcomings or what I did wrong in the past, because I can't escape the past. It's there. All I can do is improve the future. And I thought at that time frame, during that state of mind, I was like, it's better if I'm not even here.
An interesting thing that I know Dr. Sue Sisley and I talk, and you talk with her and we talk. One of the things she brought up to me, let's go to your childhood, because they've looked at this and they think kids from bad childhoods have a definite higher propensity to suffer from PTSD. And you definitely didn't have an easy childhood, did you?
No. And they say that, during, was it World War I, World War II, like 98% of the casualties were mental, and the other 2% were already fucking crazy before they went in there. And I think that what Dr. Sue said is very true. But the way the VA looks at it as, if it's pre-existing, then we're not going to give you your rating. So I would caution any vet to talk about their childhood to the VA, because they'll use it against them. But I was born into an outlaw kind of biker dad and a drug addicted mom. And, I witnessed, my parents stab each other. My dad beat my mom to the point where she was, bedridden. We had Hell's Angels that lived in the house behind us, and being briefed that if the DEA pulls me out of school in preschool to tell the cops that we don't have any firearms or drugs in the house. I witnessed probably more violence and sexual things by the age of 4 than a grown man would, in his whole entire life.
Yeah. And that's, one thing that you talk about is the VA, they'll use stuff against you, and that's absolutely true. So, again, another reason we can't be honest with our doctors or the VA, but that's another story, and we'll talk about that later. But what's interesting is people think, we have a volunteer army and a professional army. You were basically told by the judge, you're either going to jail or you're joining the Marines, correct?
Yeah, well, the way it kind of went was I was looking at some, I got into tagging, graffiti, which eventually led into gangbanging. And, being from the Bay Area, a white kid, I felt like I always had to prove myself and got in a lot of fights and ended up getting in a lot of trouble. And I got, I remember I think it was the third time I went to county jail, and this time I was actually looking at doing, possibly a couple years in prison. And I remember like breaking down, like thinking to myself, like, fuck, I need to, change my life. And I started going back to high school, which was like an adult education program. And I used to hop on the school buses to get a free ride home, and I accidentally hopped on the wrong fucking bus, and it took me to a whole nother part of town, and a recruiter rolls up and he goes, "Hey, are you Frank?" And I was like, I ain't no fucking Frank. You know, I wanted him to just pound salt. And he goes, "Hey, you ever thought about joining the Marine Corps?" And I said, when I was younger, I got in a fight in high school, and a recruiter came in as I was getting suspended, and he said, "Son, you're a fucking natural born killer. You ever thought about joining the Marine Corps?" And I said, and so he goes, "Well, why wouldn't you join now?" And I kind of told him what I was facing. And he said, "Well, are you charged yet?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "If I got your charges dropped, would you join the Marine Corps?" And I said, "Yeah." So he pretty much took the initial screening packet and told me to take to the judge and say I was already accepted. And the judge ended up dropping my whole case. And then end up, come September, I was supposed to leave. September of 2000, I was supposed to leave to boot camp, and I show up at MEPS, and they go, my recruiter told me never been arrested. Don't tell them anything. He said they only check 15% of the people that go in, and guess what? I was at 15%, and the Marine Corps was like, we can't take you because you have a criminal record. And so my dad, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing. I'm off probation. My dad ended up calling a recruiter, said, "Hey, you guys fucked up," told him to do this. The guy didn't even stand up for him and say that it was his fault. And so they ended up pulling my record. I had to get waivers actually to join the military, saying that I wasn't going to fucking just snap and beat the shit out of somebody. But
so you had to get waivers to join the Marine Corps. You must have been especially fucked up.
The Army was willing to take me without a waiver, but I wanted to be a Marine, and so and so I went into the Marine Corps thinking, I'm going to leave this life behind me and really get to be somebody's hero. And I've always had a good heart. It was just I was put in a bad, tough situation. And, it was like the total opposite. When I got to the Marine Corps, it was like, the only thing that stopped the abuse or the hazing was that killer mindset. And they really brought it out to a next level to where, you ask anybody in my unit, I was fucking somebody not to fuck with.
And I've talked to people in your unit in this. They say you're an absolute nut job. Hey, it brings up a good point, though. Think about it, right? They say we don't have the draft anymore. And I'm going to argue we absolutely have the draft. What is the socioeconomic draft? And that is poor white and brown and people are serving our enlisted corps. And it doesn't, I'm not poor. No, most of these guys are from farms or in your case, inner cities and have the opportunities or the resources when they get out to be helped. And so it kind of is this, ignorant view of the people we're dealing with, that not only did you exacerbate this issue that society caused being from, the demographic they're from, but you guys don't have the support structure. I know plenty of officers. You know where I've lived. I grew up in a middle-class family, accountant. My dad was an accountant. But I worked on Wall Street, and so I've seen both sides. And I will tell you, the way people are treated in the 1% is very, very different. And I don't think anyone's going to be surprised. But I'm telling you, you don't realize how different it is. From healthcare, from access, from jobs, to just support structure. You fuck up, and daddy's a CEO. That shit gets swept away, and you don't have to join the Marine Corps. So I realize that we have to look at ourselves when we bring these soldiers back from wars we send them to. But it's not just the war we send them to. It's the structure that allows, the kids from Beverly Hills and the kids from Marin, California, not to have to join the military. Or when they join as officers, which is a very, very different, situation. And so take us, you're out now. How does the suicide attempt, you're brought to the hospital, you're in ICU, you get out. Where do you go from there?
So, when I got out of the hospital, the only thing I wanted to do was be around my children. My youngest son was only 4 months at the time, and being that close to death really made me change my perspective as far as my family goes. And I thought it was pretty selfish of me. Well, the veteran that saved my life, had called me to check in on me. And he said, hey, bro, have you ever thought about using cannabis? And I said, I used to use cannabis when I was younger, but, with my job and the military, I kind of, looked down upon it. And he says, well, it's helping me. And he has severe PTSD, and he's missing 50% of his intestines from the anthrax shots they gave us that gave him Crohn's disease. And so I said, yeah, you know what, bro? I'm so desperate on trying to improve. I'm willing to try it, but I don't want to smoke it. I said, I'll try an edible or something like that. And he came over to my house with a 180 milligram chocolate chip cookie and a 100 milligram capsule, but he didn't give me any information. He just said, oh, here you go, bro. Like, here, take this. And I'm thinking like, well, what the fuck is this little cookie and this capsule going to do to me? I was popping 15 Norcos a day. So I ate the whole cookie and I popped the capsule. Well, 280 milligrams is probably not the best thing to do your first time trying cannabis.
Yeah, but looking at you, you're a big freaking bull, so maybe, yeah, I can understand.
Yeah, well, I was pretty stuck on the bed. I couldn't, I can only lay one position. It was a really bad experience. I mean, I almost didn't try it again. And then I go to him again. I said, that really fucked me up. I said, got me all paranoid. I didn't sleep all night. I said, well, I'll try to smoke it. I said, give me something, to smoke. And he brought me some cookies, which, some top shelf. And I was like, I used to smoke, 6-7 blunts in one sitting when I was younger. I was like, let me just take a couple hits off a pipe on this. And same thing. It fucking fucked me up really bad. And, I went over to, Elemental Wellness and I said, look, what is the lowest THC you got? Like, I am straight bitch when it comes to THC. Give me the lowest THC. And they said, oh, we got CBD. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And they're like, it has 4 milligrams of THC. And I said, yeah, give me that one. So I started smoking CBD and I really started noticing a difference. I started being more relaxed. I started being calmer around my children. And then hanging out with other vets and blazing, being able to joke and smoke. I was really starting to find, some healing. It was like I dropped my rucksack, after a long hump. And I started searching, like, where is there something where there's a program for vets that use cannabis to hang out? I want to connect with other vets. And I found Grow for Vets in Colorado, but it wasn't really what I was looking for. I'm not looking, to hand out medicine or get free medicine. I was looking at just connecting with other vets. And then I came across at Elemental Wellness, a veteran group that was ran by Jake Scallion, who's now with Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance. It was called Cannabis Corps. So I linked up with them. I probably went to like the second meeting, because anything that a dispensary has where they're saying they're helping vets, I think it's like a dog and pony show. And so it wasn't until I saw they had a free gram of weed, for every veteran that comes, so I went to the second meeting. I told him, hey, I'm starting this Weed for Warriors as like an advocacy for veterans. I said, I'll do all your artwork, I'll do, promotional material. So I started helping them with that. And Weed for Warriors, initially was started just as an advocacy. I wanted Cannabis Corps to be the groups, Weed for Warriors be kind of the outreach to inspire other vets. And then he got picked up by Santa Cruz Veterans Alliance, and he was running like 3 meetings by himself and ended up just going completely with the SCVA and dropping the Cannabis Corps. And at that point in time, I got hit up by LA from Jay Torres and Elijah Basor in Colorado. And they said, hey, we like what you're doing. We want to start a veteran group out here, but we want to call it Weed for Warriors. And I was like, whatever's going to inspire vets, let's do it. Let's save a bunch of lives. Go ahead and fucking, use the name. Let's get going. And then it fucking just ignited like a bushfire, and it took off from there. And I think because there was really a need for these veterans to connect together, because we feel so alone, or at least I did. I felt so alone. I didn't have anybody that understood me. I couldn't talk to my wife about certain things. Friends that I was, friends with outside of the military didn't understand me. And it wasn't until, starting Weed for Warriors that I really started to find a lot of healing.
Yeah. And so how long after your suicide attempt were you actually starting the Weed for Warriors? Because officially you started Weed for Warriors in 2014, correct?
Yeah. November is when I launched the site and the IG and all that, all the social media shit. But it was within 30 days of my suicide attempt, I had the concept. And and already had, a small group of vets that were here locally that were with me. And then, come November when I launched the site, I saved up money, got a site going, started all the social media. With the social media, I was running it, just putting out promotional, if you're I never saw any pro-military, pro-cannabis posters, so I started doing stuff like that. And, we got invited to speak in Colorado at High Times, and I didn't really understand how big it was or how many followers it had until we went to Colorado. And I think that was their largest veteran panel that they had. And it was like standing room only in there. And that's where I met you and Ricardo. And, I didn't even know who Dr. Sue was. I was so fucking, out of it, as far as the industry goes. All I knew is I had a passion to help other vets. And I was up there speaking, weeping, and, a lot of vets. We had over 300 vets come and medicate at our booth. So it was a great experience, and it really opened my eyes on how big this movement is. And,
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember that was the first time you were blessed with my presence. So it's probably a memory that sticks out. We're going to take a break here, and when we get back, I want to get into, some of the people that helped you launch the Weed Warriors, because there's some people I think deserve a shout out. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few.
And we'll be right back after these 5 dabs. All right, we're back. Guys? Oh, lost him to the Matrix. Thanks for tuning in to part 1 of Weed for Warriors Project podcast with Sean Kiernan and Kevin Richardson.
Okay, testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Is this too loud?
Holy shit! Yeah, that's way too loud.